Hey everyone, welcome. It's good to have everyone today for our May Employment Law webinar. We're doing something a little bit different today. Usually we are coming to you every month with kind of a bread and butter employment law topic, but we wanted to do something a little bit different for May. So some of you may know that May is Mental Health Awareness Month. And so we wanted to cover a really important topic today, something a little bit different. We have a guest speaker for you. His name is Dennis Gillan. He's going to be talking about a grief journey towards recovery. And so he's going to be covering suicide awareness, prevention. This is something that we actually field some questions from employers time to time. We'll call when they're noticing, something concerning from an employee and they want to know, what can we do to help? What should we do? What's appropriate? So I know it's something that does come up a lot in our workplaces. It's a growing issue. And so we wanted to cover this topic today. So before I introduce our guest speaker today, just going to take care of a couple house cleaning items. We have a great group today. We might have some new people that are not as familiar with our firm. So Hainsworth Sinkler Boyd, we are a full service law firm. We have more than 110 attorneys. I think that might even be an old number at this point. But we are across 2 states, South Carolina and North Carolina, in 5 different locations. And so we are full service. These webinars are usually focused on employment law, but if you have other business issues, property issues, whatever it may be, our firm can also help with those issues. So as usual, so the webinar today, you can submit questions throughout the webinar, and Dennis might cover those as he goes along or save them for the end, but he'll try to get through as many as he can. You can submit those using the Q&A and the chat features here on Zoom. The presentation slides and a recording of the presentation will be provided to you after the webinar. And this course has also been submitted for SHRM, HRCI, and CLE credits. So those will also be submitted for you. And so with that, I'll give a quick bio of our guest speaker today. So Dennis Gillan is a national thought leader on the topics of suicide prevention and mental health advocacy. Dennis has been personally touched by suicide after he lost both of his brothers to suicide 11 years apart. Dennis has worked on the suicide prevention hotline. He is an author, a TEDx speaker, and the executive director of a nonprofit called the Hathasara Foundation. The mission of the Hathasara Foundation is to improve mental health by promoting real conversations. So with that, Dennis, I will turn it over to you.
Katie, thank you very much for that kind introduction. And I want to welcome you all here. Watch the old man try now to share his screen. This is always the fun part. You think 4 years after COVID, I have this down pat. Hopefully you can see it. Katie, thumbs up. Can you see everything good?
Yes,
There it
sir.
is. Another bad hair day for Dennis Martin Gillan right there in that picture. Half a Foundation. I call this the journey towards recovery. And I operate under the basic premise that everybody's recovering from something. That's a fair statement. And the beautiful thing about that is everybody loves a good comeback. We do. And let me show you how this little journey started for me. But to tell you the truth, I wasn't a big marketing guy. I was an accountant, in accounting major in school. And so I want to come right off the bat and say I'm not a psychologist or psychiatrist. We got to get that totally clear. I was a guy bopping through life, and we had some events happen. And because of that accounting background, I tend to bottom line everything. So my marketing folks said, you need a cool title, Journey Towards Recovery. All right, they sold me on it. But before they sold me on it, this was the title of my talk. Suicide Stinks, right to the point. Right there. So my name is Dennis Gillan. Suicide Stinks. Thank you. Hainsworth, Sinkler, Boyd. That's all I have today. The rest of the day is yours. I wish. I wish I could say 2 words and get out of here. But we're gonna have to dive into this, folks, because this is something we need to talk about. And as Katie said, it's mental health month. And I may be on the bottom rung of the ladder on suicide prevention for mental health. Suicide is the bottom rung. And if someone lets go, we lose them. It's sad as can be. We want to go up the ladder and talk about mental health. So this is really a mental health talk. But with that known, there is a content warning here. We're going to talk about this stuff. If you need to leave or just mute, get off the screen, whatever, please come back. But we get it. It has happened in live presentations. It was a raw topic for some people. It's raw for me. No offense will be taken. Grace will be given. That's how we roll. And for years, I never wanted to talk about this. Never wanted to talk about it. In fact, it was in Columbia, South Carolina, for the first time I talked about it. I remember sitting down and someone says, "You need to tell that story more often." I said, "I'm never telling that story again." I was deflecting. I was always trying to get out of the conversation. And the greatest deflector ever is a woman named Wonder Woman. Full deflection mode. This is the new Wonder Woman. My Wonder Woman will always be Linda Carter, but Wonder Woman also has this tool. It's a lasso of truth, and she wraps it around the bad guy. It's always a guy. She wraps it around the bad guy, and the guy or the criminal has to tell the truth, or the rope squeezes you. So the lasso of truth, I'm going to put it on right now and tell you how I became a mental health advocate. Upper left-hand picture, fully staffed Gillan family, all five of us: Sheila, Mark, me, Janice, Matthew. That's the order chronologically. Sheila's the tall one in the back. I'm the little guy in the brown jacket, and I think we're at church for Matthew. Uh, this slide's about Mark. I was in college, and if you remember back in the day in school, any school, junior high, high school, college, whatever, remember those days you had a test like in every subject that week? I was in one of those weeks. It was like a brutal week. I'm like, oh yeah, I could barely pass one of these exams, and I had like four of them. It was a Wednesday, and on Thursday I had two tests, accounting and finance, right in my major, back to back. And I remember sitting there going, "There's no way I'm going to pass these. I got to study hard. I'm going to pull an all-nighter. I got to go. It's go time." And I was packing up my backpack, and I remember saying, "Man, this is going to be a long day because I'm going to pack up my backpack." I put a baseball hat in there because that counts as a shower. I was going to go to the library and pull an all-nighter and just learn the stuff short-term memory, and it's cram as much as I can, spit it out, come back and take a nap. That was what I was thinking. So right before I left for the door, I'm like, wow, this is going to be a long one. And then the phone rang and the day got really long. It was that cute little girl in the blue dress, Janice, on the phone saying, "Dennis, you need to come home." I was 8 hours from home. And I remember saying, "Janice, I'm exactly where I need to be." And then she said, "Dennis, you don't understand. Mark died in a car accident." And then the rest I couldn't comprehend. You all know why I'm here. My brother Mark there in the bottom right battled depression for years. Mark died by suicide. So I went home and back in the flesh. This is where I made a huge mistake. I got that call on Wednesday, went out Wednesday night, got hammered. I'm telling myself, we'll talk about that later. Um, Thursday, I went home. Weekend, we buried Mark. And then Tuesday, I was back at school. It was like a long weekend. We have a long weekend coming up. It was just like that. It was like a long weekend. And when I went back to school, I was 20. Back then, the drinking age was 18. So I was already drinking. And when I got back to school, I went for it. I was drinking hard. And I don't know what it is about the internet. The internet loves cats. I love dogs. But when I typed in drinking, this guy shows up. So here we go. I think we all can agree that if any of your colleagues or employees are drinking heavily, they're covering up a pain. There's something there. It's not the drinking per se. There's an addiction, but usually it's like, what are you running from? And I was running from the death of my brother Mark. And I think we could agree that this is a negative coping skill. Here's why it's horrible. I wasn't the only one doing it. Remember the Gillan Five? Sheila, Mark now in heaven, me, Janice, Matthew. This slide's about Matthew. And you all know this. We got lawyers, we got HR folks on the line. You never say it can't get worse because you know it can. In 11 years after we lost Mark, the phone rang again. It's Janice. And to this day, God bless my sister Janice. To this day, whenever the phone rings and I see her name pop up, my heart skips a beat. And she always says, "Hey, Dennis, everything's fine, just checking on you." But this day, everything was not fine. She said, "Dennis, you need to come home again." In a drunken stupor with access to lethal means, we lost Matthew to suicide. That's two. One family, but in America, we have close to 50,000 a year. And in the workplace, it's the ripple effect. throughout a workplace is awful. When Matthew was working, when we went down to that plant where he worked, those guys were all at the funeral and they were all hurting for certain. I got to get off the slide. So what do I do after this? After Matt is gone, what do I do? I lived in Carlisle, Pennsylvania at the time, and I'm driving back from New York where I grew up, and I'm 4 hours away. I'm like, what am I going to do with my life? And I didn't do this. I didn't do this. And one of the offices for Hainsworth, Sinkler, and Boyd is in Columbia, South Carolina, and I live in Greenville, South Carolina now. But when I lived in Columbia, South Carolina, I used to give this talk every Friday at Transitions. We did a mental health talk. It was part of our way of giving back. They said, "Can you do it?" I said, "Sure." But the first time I did it, it was all guys in this room. I had to turn the TV off. And if you ever do PowerPoint, you can see the preview coming up. And I saw this slide coming up, and I'm sitting there going, "Oh man, I should have taken this slide off," because a lot of those folks are in the homeless shelter because of a substance use disorder. And if you, my friends, have ever danced with this devil or a family member, my heart goes out to you. I shared the stage one time with a guy that went to rehab 12 times, which means we never give up on people. And now he helps others. But it was back to the homeless shelter when this slide came up almost to a man. They said, "No, you didn't do that." And I'm happy to report I didn't do that. I just the opposite. I was driving back in that 4 hour trip, and we've all been there, folks. This is not the Dennis Gillan story. This is a human story. You got some bad information. What are you going to do with it? And I had some really bad information. I'm like, what am I going to do with this? And I decided to take a break from drinking. I was, going pretty hard up, after Mark died. I decided to take a break. And this is where you want to pay attention. This is why you want to get off your email. You want to see the old man getting jiggy with the PowerPoint. Check this out. Ooh, look at that. That's fancy. All right. My son put that in there. I have no idea what he did. We're keeping it. But I decided to take a time out from drinking. And I just read a report this morning that we lose 50,000 folks to suicide. We lose close to 70,000 alcohol. You add in substance use disorder and overdoses, that's 107,000. We're talking some serious numbers. These are all deaths of desperation. I didn't want to go that route. So I decided to take a break. I'm not counting the days I'm sober, but I know them. I know them. I got shocked into it. I'm a big fan of AA, Celebrate Recovery. Whatever you do to get sober, I'm a big fan of it. I got shocked into it, but I know the last day I got drunk. The last day I got drunk was the night before we buried Matthew. I plugged that day in this little thing called time between dates. And I can tell you right now, it's 29 years, 10 months, 2 days. I'm coming up on 30 years sober this year. This is the actual number of days. It's 10,899 days. These are tears of joy, not joy. I'm proud of this, but it's also, there are some sadness here because it's 29 years. It's come up 30 years without Matthew. I know the last day I got drunk, the day before we buried him. I went to the funeral, hungover, cry. Every time I cry, I get a headache anyway, and then I need to take a nap. And that's how it works. But it's my kids have never seen me drunk. I'm proud of that. But it was, I wish that number was larger because then I could have saw what Matt was going through. I was too busy in my own little bubble. And Matt and I used to drink together. We never talked about Mark. And that's shame on us. We should have been sober and talking about our brother and what we're going to do about it. But that is hindsight's 2020. So now I'm sober. I'm living in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. I work for a really good company, selling pharmaceuticals for Merck, and they have an employee assistance program. And I decided to take advantage of it. So all my HR folks keep pushing that out. I know. Some days you push out, nobody's using it. You look at utilization rates. The boss is like, "How much does that cost?" It's worth every penny if you save one person. My employee assistance program gave me 8 free sessions. Last night I was at the company. They gave me 3, but they do all kinds of other stuff. I don't care. Just have it, push it out, keep pushing out because one day someone's going to need it. And you don't know when that is. And if you don't have an employee assistance program, do me a favor, HR folks, look into it. Just for the boss, there was a construction company I spoke to, and the owner of the company came up to me, and the HR rep talked him into buying an EAP. He said, "We need this. Our guys are hurting." He looked at the usage rates 1 year later, and she said the renewal was easy. He signed the paperwork like that because he didn't realize how many of his folks were hurting. So I went to a counselor, and I'm telling myself, the first time I went to a counselor, I looked over my shoulder and made sure nobody saw me going in. When I lived in Columbia, South Carolina, I'll tell you exactly where I went. I went to Lake Psychological. Karen Lake, I think they've since sold the business. They're on two notch. Half my tennis team, half my tennis team was actually in that practice. I don't care who saw me going in there. I really didn't, because I know at this point in my life that my physical health is just as important as my mental health, and my mental health is just as important as my physical health. So I'm a big fan of this. We talked about EAPs. You all know what they are. Um, Employee assistance programs. When I first was initiated into an EAP, all we had was counseling. Now you have all kinds of stuff. Elder care, they'll do wills as a financial component, child care, elder care. Counseling is like on the bottom of this list. There's so many things they offer now. Yesterday, when I spoke to this company, one of the things they had in their EAP was pet care. I'm like, holy mackerel, they've come a long way. But really, what they're looking at is whatever stresses your employees have, stressors, they're going to try to take care of them, or at least assist your employees. And that's what you want. Your employees thinking about work, not thinking about other stuff. Substance dependent. So I'm a big fan of these. So we'll go over this. Here's some other resources. Recently, I went to a doctor, and I'm not a big fan of going to the doctor at my age. They poke and prod in places I don't think they need to be there, but it's all part of it. I dread going in, but I'm glad when I go. Same thing with my accounts. I dread going in the building. I'm glad when I get back in the car. I recently was at my primary care provider, and she said temperature is fine, blood pressure is fine. And she started doing a mental health screening tool, and this is how she introduced it. She goes, Mr. Gillan, I'm sorry, but I have to ask you these questions. Have you been sad lately? And that was for me a teachable moment, because I'm a mental health advocate. I know exactly what she's doing. So I said, can you do me a favor and never apologize for asking that question? So you don't know what I do for a living. I go around the country talking about suicide prevention. I want you to lean in when you ask that question and make it comfortable for the person to say, yeah, I've been sad lately. Some folks, the only time they get out of the house is when they go to the doctor. So it was a teachable moment. It was kind of cute because I said, do you have any resources in your office if someone says, I'm sad, or, I'm depressed, or even suicidal? And she goes, no, we really don't. I said, I'll be right back. I ran out to my car, and they have resources now at my doctor's office. Yay. So teachable moment. So you may get asked that if you go to your doctor. Hey, the text line, call line, it's now 988. And we lobbied hard for that for years. It used to be that really long number, 800-273-8255. I'm a mental health advocate, and I could barely remember it. Think about how to remember that number when you're in a crisis. Oh, you're not going to remember that. You can't even, you couldn't even tell me how to get home right now if you're in a crisis. But 988, I can remember. You should remember that too. And you can text, by the way, they have text capabilities. Back to the homeless shelter. That was a big feature. When I told them they could text, they were all over that because they have roommates. There's 4 to a room up there at Transitions. They cannot make calls after 10 o'clock, audio calls, verbal calls, vocal calls. They can't do that, but they can text after 10 o'clock. And if you're so now 988 is fully adaptable with text. You say, I'm not doing so hot, 988, they'll text you back. You call, and you can call for a friend. Some other stuff, Psychology Today is a great way to find a psychologist. That's what I did. I have a girl up here named Erin Kelly. She's a great counselor. I've had really good insurance in my life. I've had lousy insurance in my life. I pay cash money to go see Erin because I think it's worth it. I also think because I stopped drinking, I'm going to be rich. I have no idea where that money went, but it's not with me. Erin has it. And finally, you can call 911 if you're really concerned about an employee, a colleague, a loved one. Call 911, but use the key phrase, I need a mental health well check. If someone's not showing up for work, hey, can you do a mental health well check on my employee? It's day 2 and he's not here. We're training through the good folks at NAMI, the National Alliance of Mental Illness, and I can't say enough good stuff about those folks. There's a chapter everywhere. We're training police officers through their crisis intervention training, how to respond to a mental health call. It's different than an armed robbery. It's a different call. And I had a kid come up to me one time at a college and said, Mr. Gillan, if I call the cops on my roommate, he will be mad at me. To which I replied, I wish my brothers were mad at me. I really do. I wish if Matt and Mark walked by my window in my office and they both flipped me off, I'd be the happiest guy in this webinar right. So don't be afraid to pull that card if you have to. I'd rather you be embarrassed than have to be a pallbearer. That's a fact. So, and check on your employees. Also, some resources here, and we'll get these slides out to you. CDC has a bunch of stuff. Workplace suicide prevention. I'm part of that committee. They meet every month. That's a good group. I'll send you all these links. National Alliance for Suicide Prevention. There's one group I want you to look at to watch here is the construction industry. So the construction industry has a very high rate of suicide. Males, the high use of pain, cowboy attitude, somewhat stoic, suck it up, buttercup, that attitude. I see them when I'm on the road, these construction guys that come back to the hotel with the carts loaded for beer. They work hard, they play hard, and mostly males. So here's a stat you need to know: 80% of all completed suicides are guys. Women, you're not off the hook. 3 to 4 times more attempts. So the construction industry, realizing that they have a higher rate than the average populace of America, they're on it. So check out preventconstructionsuicide.com. I know a good idea when I steal one. Look what they're doing. I'm not asking you to reinvent the wheel. We could borrow from them. We could also get involved with these nonprofits, the American Foundation of Suicide Prevention. Probably one of the reasons I could do this talk right now. The good people, the Mental Health America. There's a chapter everywhere. You need someone to come to your office, find Mental Health America, find NAMI. They're everywhere. NAMI.org. I put NAMI Greenville, South Carolina, because that's where I live. See, they have an office everywhere. We're lucky in South Carolina. I know there's a lot of people that are maybe out of state, but we have the SCDMH folks. We have an Office of Suicide Prevention. We have mobile crisis units in South Carolina, where instead of calling the cops, you call mobile crisis, and they'll send a psychologist out with a police officer. They have to be safe. Or you write me a note. Say, Dennis, I don't know what to do here. I'll connect you. Remember, not a psychologist, not a psychiatrist, just a guy. So let me know. And there's my email, dennis@halfasorrow.org. And I don't give that to anybody. Here's some self-care examples. I'm a big fan of this stuff because we all have our phones on us. I use the one on the bottom, UCLA Wellness app. I have a, don't tell my wife, but I have a secret crush on the woman who does the meditation. It's her voice is so soothing. And whenever I'm stressed, I could pick my stress level and I could pick the meditation. There's one for like 5 minutes. There's one for 9 minutes. I'm super stressed. There's a 13-minute one. And there's one for me to go to sleep. So check those out. If you're strapped for cash and say, listen, let's do something for our employees. Let's do something for ourselves. Check out these. And the guy from Headspace, that's another one of the voice. I could listen to that guy read recipes. It's so soothing right off the bat. I think that's one of the job requirements. If you are a vocal person on this website, you have to have some kind of soothing voice, and they do. So there you go. That's some self-care examples. And I have to take this slide out for all the HR folks on the line. I can't thank you enough for pushing out. I'm going to cry thinking about this, but the EAP program, I used to throw that crap out all the time after Mark died. Oh, here's your EAP. I don't need it. I don't need it. I don't need it. And then all of a sudden I needed it. I needed it. And it was because of some nameless HR person that kept filling up my inbox with all these happy messages and all this bull crap that I thought was bull. Now I'm on the other side of the fence. Absolutely vital. Keep pushing this out. Whatever you do it, because you never know when you hit them. That EAP email came across one day and I wasn't doing so hot, thinking about Matt. I'm like, you know what? I need to take advantage of this. And I did. I went in and saw the counselor. The first time I got introduced to counseling was through my EAP. And that was in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. I'll never forget it. Then I moved to Chicago. You ever try to run away from your problems? I do all the time. Guess what? They follow you. They're like one car behind you. And I went to Chicago and I didn't tell anybody. I was part of the stigma I'm now fighting. I didn't tell anybody about my brothers. I go to Chicago, fresh start, new job. And people go, Dennis, how many kids in your family? I say, I have 2 sisters back in New York. Boom, we're done. I'm not talking about my brothers. I can't. I can't do it. One day I went to this thing at church and they're supposed to have donuts. And I walked in and all my friends were there. And I looked around. I love my friends, but I love donuts more. I looked around and said, where are the donuts? And they said, oh, they took them upstairs. There's some community program going on upstairs. So I said, guys, see you later. I'm starving. I'll sit through anything for a donut. It could be like the history of the organ. Sign me up. You got powdered sugar? I'll listen to you. I go upstairs, grab my donuts. This woman walks in. Does anybody want to guess what they're talking about on that particular day? What does a guy who lost two brothers to suicide really not want to talk about? Suicide prevention. This woman who came to our church that day spoke on behalf of the local call center for the suicide prevention lifeline. I'm like, you're kidding me. If I would have got up and walked out, everybody in that room would have known Dennis has a problem with this. There's a story there. And there is a story. There's a story with everyone, but I just couldn't do it. I'm like, I'm not ready. So I grabbed a card. I sat there real quietly. Plus, I had a really good seat near the donut table. I wasn't giving that up. So I grabbed her card, and on the way out, I said, I'll call you one day. That's all I said to her. One day became like 10 months later. Mr. Passive Aggressive. The card was staring a hole at me on my desk. It was staring right at my face. So one day I called her up and I said, Stephanie, my name is Dennis Gillan. I saw you speak about a year ago, and this is my story. And she's a force of nature. She said, Dennis, get your butt in here. She said, who better to help on the helpline than somebody that walked the walk you walk? And she lost her mother to suicide. That's why she started it. So all these people that are involved in this work know this work because they felt it. So I started working on the suicide prevention lifeline, some of the most rewarding work I've ever done. And Katie touched on that in my intro. Um, from Thursday nights from 8 to midnight, which is kind of funny because I can't stay up past 10, I would work the phones. And I'll tell you about this one call. This kid was awesome, Kyle. But before I get to Kyle, this is the best cartoon I ever saw on depression. And I wrote the author, the artist, excuse me, Christian Nygaard. I said, can I use this in my presentation? And Christian said, sure. Just give me credit and let people know where you can find it. And there it is. Upper left-hand corner, the dark guy, that's me after Matt died. There's a darkness. But if you saw me on the street, I'm happy as can be. How you doing, Dennis? Living the dream. Everything's good. We all put on that facade. But believe it or not, people leave clues every now and then. Or there's a crack in the armor. Like, there's something there, and they'll let it be known that things aren't going so good, and we have to really put our radar up. And Kyle, this kid that called in to the helpline, had his radar up. He called in for a friend. And by the way, you can do that. You can call in for somebody. It doesn't have to be you. I know a bunch of fraternity guys one time that dialed the phone number and handed it to the guy in crisis. I thought that was genius. I'm like, that's awesome. Bunch of knuckleheads, you did it. You pulled it off. I hugged them all. I said, that's awesome. But Kyle had to call the helpline and goes, sir, on the helpline, my name is Marty. That's my middle name. He goes, Marty, my friend is sending me some texts and they're not good. And this is the clue that Kyle had. He was getting text messages from a friend, and I'll say one. Let me know if you hear it. I need your ears on this one. The text said this: Kyle, you've been a good friend. Past effing tense. Past tense. Try not to curse. I don't drink. I'm working on my cursing. Past tense. You've been a good friend. You have been a good friend. At the contraction, Kyle's like, hold on, I'm a good friend. As we're on the phone, Kyle says, sir, I just got another text message from him. It said, Kyle, I'll see you from the other side. Wow, we're in the red zone. So I told Kyle everything I knew to, tell him. It's like telemedicine if you think about it. It's like, Kyle, you got to, triangulate. Don't take this on yourself. Get the adults involved. These are some kids. Like, call the cops if you need to. I had a whole list of stuff I told Kyle to do. So activate your network. Do not take this on yourself. It's not between me and you. It's between me, you, and the entire city of Chicago. We got to find this guy. Hang up the phone. About 10 minutes later, Kyle calls me back and says, sir, he's not picking up the phone. Now, I've since asked for forgiveness, but I didn't ask for permission when I broke this rule. I said, Kyle, give me the phone number. And at the Suicide Prevention Lifeline, and I have lawyers and HR folks on the line, and you know about rules and policies. They're supposed to be followed for a reason. And I believe in them, but I broke this one. I made an outgoing phone call. And you're not supposed to do that because all the phone calls should be coming in. That just makes perfect sense. But he gave me the phone number. I sat there for like 1 second and thought about it. I said, no, I'm calling him because you're looking at a guy that lost two brothers to suicide. I'm like, I can't do this. I got to try everything. And I called the phone number, and the kid did not recognize the phone number, and he picked up. That was a victory right there. He's still alive. First, he was hot, super hot. Who gave him my phone number? Blah, blah, blah. Super hot. And then when he calmed down, we spoke for 90 minutes. When I say we spoke, I listened. He just had to get some stuff out. And that's what they taught us on the Suicide Prevention Lifeline. And you HR folks know that. You don't fix it, you just listen. And I just had to let him go. And at the end of the phone call, he came up with a solution. He was going to let his parents in his world. The star of this slide, Kyle. Kyle. Kyle is the man. Kyle figured it out. This guy may have been texting hundreds of people, putting stuff on social media. No one picked up the vibe but Kyle. So let's work on right now. The learning part of this will be the risk factors and warning signs. Risk factors and warning signs. First risk factors, here we are, all of them. It's hard for me to look at this because I could check a bunch of these boxes. Family history of suicide, check. We lost Mark, we had a family history. Lost a job, had one of those. Divorce, had one of those. I'd rather have my gum scraped. All this stuff. But what it doesn't mean, this is for me now, it doesn't mean I'm going to die by suicide. It just means Dennis Martin Gillan, you better be on your A game when it comes to your mental health. You better be aware. And if you're around somebody that's going through something like this, there's a person I know who does suicide prevention training. She says if she ever runs into a male who's going through a divorce, she doesn't even wait. She says, are you suicidal? She just says it. She just gets it out. And I put on the bottom there, pandemic. We're seeing the hangover effect of the pandemic. In 2019 and 2020, suicides actually went down. It can be done. Suicide is preventable. They went down. And then in 2021, they came back up. And in 2022 is the number I gave you, the 49,449. Let's call it 50 because it's underreported. They went back up. So the pandemic had an effect on us, especially the kids. It got us all, but it got them pretty good. So that's risk factors. And we'll send this out. Talk. I'm going to put these in 3 buckets. These are warning signs. Talk. Kyle, the kid was talking to Kyle. He was texting. Text counts as talk with the kids. Take it all seriously and listen without offering fixes. I think my wife put that on there. I mentioned the divorce. I got remarried. Every time my wife goes on a rant, I try to fix it. And she just sits there and goes, Dennis, don't fix it. Just be a sounding board. And you think I know that because of all the work I do. So now I just sit there and hug her. After she's done, I just sit there, hug her, and say, honey, it's because you care. And I don't give her my solution because my solution's always awesome. It's often in my head, but when I say it, it's not that good. Take it all seriously, listen without offering fixes, be the sounding board. Uh, think about that call I had with a kid for 90 minutes. First thing he came at me was, I'm not doing so hot in school. If I would have said, sounds like you need to study harder, click, he hangs up. 90 minutes becomes 9 seconds, right? So look at this. They may feel trapped or a burden. If somebody jokes about it in front of me, I don't go all woke on them. I don't do that. It just doesn't work. People don't buy in an argument. I don't go, hey, you don't know my story. I lost 2 brothers. You can't joke about that in front of me. But what I will do is I'll pull them aside later and say, hey, you sort of joked about this. You may not know my story, but is everything okay? And do you feel the temperature of that conversation drop on the first one? Oh, you can't joke about that. Like, are you okay? And if you're ever not okay, would you do me a favor and call me? That's a friend we all want. So there we go. Talk. The next one's behavior. Oh boy, substance abuse. Told you about that. And someone's going to see the typo on there. This is like the one typo I have. Watch for these behaviors. It's a picture. I can't fix it. There's supposed to be an A in there. I usually get one letter about that. Hey, there should be an A. I know. I got you. Substance abuse, increased use of alcohol, drugs, guilty, not pointing any fingers. I did that. Sleep. Right now, I'm sober and I'm in counseling. And when something's going wrong, I don't sleep very well. And I'm going to give you 3 tips about sleep. 3 quick ones. 1, the room has to be dark. That's me, folks. I wear a mask. I know. I know. Looks goofy, but you know what? If I had the mask on, I can't see you laughing at me. I'm probably sleeping. I packed it last night. I was in Atlanta, staying with a friend. The shades did not come all the way down. It was bright as can be. I said, I got my mask. Went in my bag, got it. Slept like a log. Woke up in the fireplace. Just checking to see if you're still with me. It is lunchtime. I see there's a Q&A in there, so someone can monitor that. I just saw that pop up. There's a comment. The room has to be dark, cold. 72 is no bueno. This guy recommended 64 to 68 degrees. I saw a guy speak about this. It's got to be cold now. If you open up the window, guess what? You hear your neighbor's dog. You also reckon a white noise machine. I don't know if you have one of these. Phenomenal. You may have some in your law practice or HR. If someone comes in, you put the white noise on in the hallway so people can hear you. Put it on in your bedroom. You can't hear a squat. It's awesome. Um, Other behaviors: acting reckless, withdrawal, isolation, cleaning, saying goodbye, giving stuff away. If someone's at work and they're giving their tools away, this is an actual story. Some dude was giving away his stuff. Another guy stepped in and said, "Are you quitting the job?" And the guy's like, "I'm quitting everything." And that included life. But this dude stepped in and said, "No, you're not." Brought him to his house. He slept on his couch. He got thrown out of his house, girlfriend. There's a whole bunch of other stuff going on. Saved the dude's life because he noticed a guy giving away tools on the shop floor. And he said, "Time out. That's not right." Saved his life. He recently sent me a picture of this guy, and he was walking his daughter down the aisle. The guy he saved, which is incredible. I started crying when I saw it. Like that almost didn't happen. So, last thing is moods, talk, behavior, mood. You all can read this, but the one that got me was that suddenly happier or calmer. And I ran into a guy I was in Colombia. I used to go into survivor of suicide loss meetings. Those are where people who lost somebody to suicide. I'm a lost survivor. We get together, and if you need to find one, let me know. Just write Dennis at halfastar.org. I'll connect you with the list. I actually facilitate one here in Greenville. I was at a lost meeting, and the person said his sibling, his brother, was happier and calmer, but what he was doing was throwing his big brother off his trail, and he also had a plan to die. It was awful, and we lost. Awful. So just go with your gut. Every now and then, the key is to look for changes. The guy who gave me those three sleep tips, he's a neuroscientist. He also said we have three brains based on nerve endings, one in our heads, one in our heart, and one in our gut. Just counting nerve endings. And every now and then, you got to go with your gut. And another point I want to make, and all my points are awesome. Just ask me. Uh, Another point I want to make is if you're around somebody like this, step in. But there's only two people I talk to when I do this talk. You're around somebody that's exhibiting the symptoms. The other person I speak to is it may be you. And trust me, I've been in both buckets. I was concerned about somebody, and then I lost Mark, and everybody was concerned about me. I was doing better. I was concerned about everybody else, and then I lost Matthew, and everybody was concerned about me. Rightfully so. I wasn't in a good place. And I do know for their fact, this is a really cool story. At Clarion University, I speak a lot of colleges. I packed up my bag. I'm usually the last one out. And I was leaving, and a bunch of guys were around this one dude, like 15 guys around this one student. And I yelled over there. I said, "You guys all right? Is everything okay?" And one student came up to me and said, "Sir, when you were going over the warning signs, this guy leaned over to a friend of his and said, 'That guy is talking about me,'" which was incredibly brave. He was a vulnerable moment. You just have to watch Brene Brown's TEDx talk about the strength of vulnerability. Vulnerability. He was brave. And what was really cool for me to see was one, he raised his hand, and two, the response. Here's what happens, folks. We all love to help people. We really stink at asking for help. And with that one little statement, that guy said he's talking about me. He was a cry for help. And the help was like the cavalry. They had this guy. When I left that building, I felt confident that that kid was going to be okay. Those guys had him. It was really cool to watch. This is when I first started talking about suicide prevention, not too far from the office of Hainsworth, Sinclair, and Boyd there on Main Street. This is at the River Canal. That's when I started speaking about it. Um, they didn't. I spoke about my brothers for the first time, but what they didn't tell me is right before I went on, um, they passed around a microphone, and everyone said the name of the loved one they lost. And I was doing pretty good. I was watching the microphone come around because I was next. I'm watching it. And then this woman says the name of her husband, and I don't recognize the name. And then she goes to pass the microphone around this little kid, and the kid grabs her arm, and the microphone ends up right in front of his face. And he says, "My daddy." And I just crumbled. I just lost it. My thank God I had sunglasses on. My head is down. Somebody snapped that photo of me. I'm crying my eyes out because that's what suicide meant to this kid. It cost him his daddy. I watched my mom take the microphone. She couldn't say Mark and Matthew. And I get that. When you're grieving, you're all over the board. You're all over the board. And then they gave him the microphone. They said, "Ladies and gentlemen, our top fundraiser, Dennis Gillan." I couldn't even talk. It was the worst 5 minute speech ever. I bumbled through it, but I got through it, did another walk. These are the Out of the Darkness walks for American Foundation of Suicide Prevention. If you are a South Carolinian, you know that woman there. That's Nikki Haley. Was our former governor. I don't care about your politics. I really don't. I lobby for mental health dollars. If you have a D, R, or I after your name and you're elected official, I just need to know, are you willing to spend money on mental health? That's my thing. All right. Everybody has a thing. That's my thing. I don't think we spend enough. She came to the walk. This is the 10-year anniversary when she was governor. This is a couple of years back. Did a great job. Awesome. She cut the ribbon. Her husband was there. He's in the military. He showed up. The kids were there. They were little at the time. Now they're probably all grown up. She represented our state very well at that. And I don't care about your politics. If it's something you care about, if there's a cause you care about, and the number one office holder in your state comes to it, you go over and say thank you. So that's me and Brendan saying thank you to Nikki Haley. Thank you for coming because we care about this. She was my second favorite person to see that day. The guy in the pink shirt was my first. He comes up to me. I'm handing out these beads, and the beads are like, I'm wearing two orange beads. They're survivor beads. I lost two brothers. So he comes up to me and goes, I need two of those beads as well. He goes, I lost two brothers. I'm like, what? I thought I was a unicorn. I thought I was all by myself. And he goes, no, no. And so we started talking. And then it was just unbelievable. Like every time you think you're alone and you think you're on the island of misfit toys, you're not alone. You're not alone. Does anybody get that reference, by the way? It's tough on video, but the island of misfit toys. Do you remember those guys? It's from Rudolph. From Rudolph, and every one of these toys had a different issue. There you go. Someone put the smile face. There you go. This is coming back. I'm an old guy. This is Rankin Bass. Check out the one in the middle, the Dolly for Sue. I always wondered about it. Everyone else has an issue that the elephant, polka dots, the cowboy rides an ostrich, Charlie, Jack in the Box. His real name's Charlie. Everyone has a thing going on here. I often wondered about the doll, and then I heard it on NPR one time that Arthur Rankin said we put the doll on there for psychological reasons. Remember, she cried a lot. If you remember Rudolph, she cried a lot. Who cries a lot? Someone with depression. He said, we put her on there because she was depressed. And I'm sitting there going, holy crap. If this guy can think about putting somebody with a mental health issue on a kid's show in the 60s, we could talk about this crap in 2024. It was brilliant, brilliant move. And here's a funny story about this because I'm getting all fired up. Funny story. I spoke at the Northeast Columbia Rotary Club, and they met at Northeast Presbyterian Church. They had a sound guy, and I was taking off the microphone. And the sound guy comes up to me. I went through the slide, and he goes, "Hey, you know that story about the doll?" I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "It's true." I'm like, "What do you think? I was lying about it?" he Googled me. He fact checked me while I was giving my talk. It's true. Arthur Rankin put her on there for psychological reasons. And to this day, I think the world of that man because that was brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. All right, getting all fired up. There you go. Now it all makes sense, right? That's what we got our foundation name. A shared joy is a double joy. A shared sorrow is half a sorrow. There's our foundation. What do we do with that foundation? We do a lot of things. We have this thing called the purple folder for when you're feeling kind of blue. I have a huge purple folder. That folder is right over there off my desk. Whenever I'm having a bad day, I open up the purple folder. And it's in there as a card from my mom, a nice review from work. Someone wrote me a nice note. Hey, I'm glad you came to my school and spoke. I put it in there because there's days I feel like quitting. HR, this is a super easy program. The purple folder, you call it the smile file. You can have an electronic version. Just set it up. It's so easy. We lost a guy to suicide. I mean, that purple folder pulled me out of it. I was in a funk for like a week. Finally, I just put the purple folder on my desk. All right, self-care time. Read this stuff. I was in Entrepreneur Magazine. That's Jimmy Fallon on the cover. We're like best friends now. I was on like page 46. But let me tell you the story about this. They said, Dennis, take the photo. I submitted the article and they said, yeah, we'll do it. Take the photo. And the photo editor called me. She's from Charleston, by the way, South Carolina. And she said, Dennis, take the photo from your chin down. I guess I got a face made for radio. And she said, hold the folder. And then she said this, Mr. Gillan, I'm glad they picked your story because this is a reader submission. They probably get thousands of them, and they picked mine to run. And I said, Judith, why are you glad they picked my story? Because I know from doing this for years, that's an invitation for a conversation. When somebody throws a comment out like that, don't say thank you or whatever. Explore it. I said, Judith, thank you. Why? Why are you glad they picked my story? And she said, Mr. Gillan, I lost my mother to suicide. You never know who's out there hurting. You just never know. You just never know. So share your sorrows. Check this out. This is a new program coming for men. And this picture on the right, I can go around the country and nobody notices it. But boy, oh boy, I put this puppy up when I'm in South Carolina and people lose it. I'm wearing a USC shirt and a Clemson hat. And people say, you can't do that. I love them all. I love them all. I love them all. Sue me. Some lawyers on the line. I can do that. I had one guy almost get out and walk out. He's like, I don't think you heard a word I said after that. But there it is. Yeah, you can love both. This is the Camel Hat Club. When I went through my divorce, little funny side note: ex-wife was Christine, new wife Christine. I call her Christine 2.0. All the bugs or upgrades. Don't tell her I said that. We're not recording this, are we? Yeah, we are. Anyway, when I went through my divorce, I moved from a big house in Blythewood to a small apartment in Greenville, and the walls were closing in on me. I met this one guy, and I said, one day we should go to breakfast, and it just grew and it grew and it grew. We now call it the Camel Hat Club. Why? Because men tend to camouflage their emotions. This is for men right now. Ladies, don't be offended. I saw my mom in the Red Hat Society. I kind of borrowed the idea. You get where I'm going with this, right? Men need to get together. Every first Thursday of the month, we meet at Maple Street Biscuit on North Avenue here in Greenville. You're more than welcome to join us every first Thursday from 8 to 9. And I go in there, I see these guys, and I leave. Most of them retired. They want to stay there all day. I got to go back to work. Here's the deal. If I didn't have this Camel Hat Club, I would never see these guys. That's a fact. Life takes over. I could have used this when I was 20. I could have used this when I was 30. I don't want this to be an old man's club sitting around talking about, how many times you have to get to go to the bathroom at night. I don't want that. I want this club to be universal. And ladies, I am working on one for you, but this is the Camel Hat Club. Start it. If you're a guy out there, I can't see you, but start one. It's so simple. Wednesday before we meet, somebody sends out a text message, hey, is that tomorrow? And we go, yeah. And 4 or 5 guys show up. That's all I need. This one was a big one. We're outside because it's during COVID. We went right through COVID. We've been doing it 6 years. I look forward to this. And I'm telling you what, I never would see these guys, but I need them. All right. Camel Hat Club. We have a Camel Hat website coming soon. We're going to launch it June 1st. You guys got a sneak peek. There's our logo. What else we got? Oh, the book. Check that out. That guy I co-wrote it with is alive because of a compliment when he was a kid. I couldn't get the story out of my head. I brought him up on stage at University of Delaware. Someone saved his life by giving him a compliment. Nice shoes. Guess what? We wrote a children's book about it. Available on Amazon. And if you buy it, I'll come down there and sign it. There you go. Here's how you can help our foundation. One, keep doing what you're doing with the EAPs and employment law. Check on each other. Maybe bring me in to speak to your staff. I just got back from Atlanta. I spoke to a bunch of guys in the mining industry, quarry work. It's brutal. They have a high suicide rate. I had a room full of guys. I loved it. I love audiences that don't want to be there. I thrive on that. Bunch of guys in a room. They'd rather be out moving rocks and stuff. They have to sit down and listen to me. Bring it. Bring it. I had them for the entire hour. It was unbelievable. You could donate. Today we donated this talk. If you want to help me out financially, fine. I really like you to bring me in to speak to your employees. I will ask you for a donation if I do that. Probably a big bill if you have it, if you're a big company. No, somewhere you got to help us out if possible. And if you have any kids that run around the house on their phones all day, and you say you need to get an internship, I'll take them. I need some help on social media. And again, I put my phone number or my email out there for you all. If you need any help, connections, whatever, you're working with somebody, you got a kid, you're pulling your hair out, I will try to connect you to the right folks, right resources. All right. I'm here for you. I appreciate all you do. We do some trainings, QPR. I did this one time for the lawyers down at SC Bar. I did help work with Beth Paget, Lawyers Helping Lawyers. We did one down in Charleston, and it was interesting. I got some feedback from a lawyer. She did family law, and she goes, I thought I was going to have to use this with my clients. She said, Dennis, I had to use it with my partner. Again, back to that point, you never know who's hurt. You just never know. So here's Talk Save Lives. I'm well versed in all these, and then me yelling at your employees for an hour. That's my keynote talk. I don't yell at them for an hour. We have fun. You saw how it went today. It's a tough subject. We're going to go to the edge. We're going to come back. I usually go over your employee assistance program. Last night, the company sent me 2 slides. I went over their EAP. Everybody was happy. HR was happy. It was a good session. No matter what your rabbit is, I want you to grow from it. That's me in Blythewood, South Carolina. When I lived there, I used to grow these sunflowers. I still do. This year's crop doesn't look so good in Greenville. I don't know if it's a Blythewood soil. They went really tall, but I didn't realize rabbits eat them. Rabbit ate every one of them except the one by the road. But every one of these sunflowers had a trauma, and I had to go pick them up. And there's a lesson in here for us, folks. Every one of those sunflowers died where the rabbit traumatized it. Everyone died except for this one by the garage. It had the same thing happen to it, but it didn't give up. Don't give up. This little one, it grew up, and I like them really tall. These are called mammoth, 6'4", 6'5". They go high, 7, 8 feet. They go big. This sunflower only grew to about my hip, but it was my favorite sunflower because it didn't give me one flower, it gave me 3. It had a trauma, and it was beautiful after that trauma. Sure, it took a while. It took a lot of soil nourishment. It took a lot of miracle grow. It took a lot of care, but it came out beautiful. And when I do this talk live, all the girls go, ah, and all the guys go, it's not that cool. It is cool. Here comes our culture corner right now. I'm going to read you a poem, and then we'll wrap it up. I walked a mile with pleasure. She chatted all the way, but left me none the wiser for all she had to say. I walked a mile with sorrow, and narrow words said she, but oh, the things I learned for her when sorrow walked with me. I have learned a ton about myself in this sorrow. I've learned I don't like any more sorrows. I know that, but it's in the valleys where you grow. So I'm trying to tell you, be thankful for the troubles of life, but use them in a way where your pain becomes your purpose. And I'd love to have no sorrow in life, but it's part of life. It makes you appreciate the good stuff. I miss my brothers dearly, and every time I talk about it, I cut my sorrow in half and half and half. But they're always going to be with me. That's Mark on the left. This is one of my favorite pictures. And Matt with the basketball. Matt was so happy to be outside that he forgot to zipper up his pants. Classic. And then there's a rare photo of Matt, and this is in North Carolina, down at Carolina Beach. I'm going to wrap it up right there. I got to get off the slide because this slide hurts. Stay in touch, folks. Stay in touch. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, but there it is. We're on the Facebook, Instagram, not so much the Threads and the TikTok. Who knows? I'm a little too old for social media, but if I didn't have the speaking business, I would get off it. But there, stay in touch with us. We try to spread good cheer and be real. So there it is. Hainsworth, Sinclair, Boyd, I'll throw it back to you. Katie, Keely, thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, Dennis. It looks like we have a question in the Q&A. An attendee said, how do you assist someone who is down this path without negatively affecting your own mental health?
Great question. Self-care is not selfish. There's a not I actually set my wife this way. NAMI has a program which is really cool. You want to support the person who's in a mental health crisis, but when you do that, it drains you. So one, I'll tell you, don't make it all your job. Get other people involved. You can't do it. You can't be that person's guardian for 24/7. You're gonna have to take a shower one day. You're gonna have to go to bed. You're gonna have to be not available. So make it a community effort. The other one I would say is get in touch with those folks at NAMI. They do a program where they help the caregiver. They help the caregiver. That's a brilliant move because the caregiver is getting tapped. It's draining. And the old saying you hear from every therapist, you can't pour from an empty cup, but it's so true. We lost a guy to suicide, and literally about 2 days later, someone called me up. They wanted me to help with this guy that was suicidal. Could you just talk to him? He lost somebody. And I never say this, but I know my boundaries. I had to say no because I was tapped. I felt terrible. I said, find me in about a month. We just lost a fraternity brother who was my age, and we were trying to, it was awful. And I just couldn't help. But that would what I do. I'd find the good folks in NAMI. Don't take it on yourself. Get a community involved, and seriously take care of yourself. There'll be boundaries. So listen, I can't do it right now because I got nothing, and that's fair because we don't have something all the time. That's a fact. Everyone on this call, I'm tapped.
We do have a couple other questions. A question about one of the apps you shared. Is the UCLA wellness app called UCLA Mindful?
That's it. That is, and it's what's her name, Carol Winston or whatever her name is, the lady I had the crush on with her voice. It's awesome. It's just soothing. It just takes me down a couple pegs, and I could think better. I could think better. There's a lot of positive signs around mindfulness. But if I'm agitated, think about your lawyers, you got this case, your midnight hour, like you can't think straight, you can't concentrate. That thing just, all right, Dennis, ramp it down a bit, ramp it down. And then I can go, all right, let's go forward. It's worth the 5, 9, 13 minutes you do it.
We have one more. Somebody says, when you lost your brothers, was there anything helpful people said or did for you that was especially helpful?
Oh yeah, great question. And people often get their like knickers in a twist because they don't know what to say. A good friend of mine, I'll give you the example, just showed up one day. He says, we're going to a movie. This is after Matthew died, and I went dark after Matthew died. My younger brother, I was down for the count. He came to my house and said, we're going to a movie. I didn't have a choice. He goes, get out. And then we went back to his house afterwards. His name is George Hatchett. I got to give him credit. And we sat on a swing. And I don't think I said 2 words. But I wasn't in my house and I wasn't in my head. I was just swinging. And then I got up around midnight. I said, all right, thanks, George. I'm going home. It's called the ministry of presence. You don't have to say anything. You just have to be there. You could say, like, listen, address the elephant in the room. I have no idea what you're going through, but I'm here for you. Stop right there. I had a friend of mine get a hold of me on Facebook in Colombia. They said, hey, this person's husband died of suicide. What do I do? I said, what would you do if you had a heart attack? She said, I'd make a casserole and go over there. I said, well, do me a favor. Make a casserole and get your butt over there. It's still gone. God is gone. So it's the ministry of presence. You don't have to say anything, but trust me, there's not a word in the dictionary or the source that could have made me feel better. I just needed to know that someone was looking at me. So thank you for that question. Get me all fired up here, Katie.
And you
All
have a
emotional. I don't know why I'm
compliment.
so emotional today.
Yeah, and you have a compliment too. Thanks for appreciate your candor. You were genuine and engaging. So
Oh, thank you.
So
Tough
Dennis,
subject.
thank you. Thank you so much for being on our monthly webinar. This is such an important topic, and thank you for your candor and your genuineness. And thanks for sharing your contact information. If any of our folks that are on today, please reach out to Dennis or the resources that he shared if you need help with any of these issues. So with that, anything else, Dennis, to wrap us up?
No, I appreciate Hainsworth, Sinkler, and Boyd for doing this. A lot of people, you say the word suicide, they run the other way, but we need to run towards the bear on this one. We need to run right at it and take it on. So thank you very much. And it truly is a mental health talk. So Katie, Keely, and everybody else at Hainsworth, Sinkler, Boyd, thank you very much for bringing me on.
Thank you. Thanks for attending today. So everyone, Keely, I'll let you jump in. I think you maybe have update for next month.
So next month, Dennis, thank you very much for your conversation and for sharing this important topic. Next month, we are June 27th, and it will be a legislative update. Joseph and Katie are going to be talking about some of the legislative issues that have occurred since we last spoke on that issue in January. And we'll send you the information. We'll also send the follow-up information with the slides, so you'll have the resources and the recording as well. So thank you all for being here.
Thanks for joining this webinar presented by Hainsworth Sinkler Boyd. To learn more about the firm and its services, visit hsblawfirm.com.